Here's the guy who invented something we use every single day, something that saved countless lives, and yet the people who stole it from him made billions while he got nothing. And what he did next changed patent law forever. Picture this. It's a rainy night in 1953. Robert Kearns is driving home from his wedding reception with his new bride. They're celebrating, they're happy, everything's perfect. Then a champagne cork pops. It flies across the car and hits him directly in his left eye. That accident leaves him partially blind for life. And you'd think that's the tragedy of this story, but it's not even close. Because what happens next, over the next 30 years, is going to destroy him in ways that no physical injury ever could. Fast forward to 1962. Robert Kearns is now a professor at Wayne State University in Detroit. He's got 6 kids. He's living a normal life. But there's something that bothers him every time it rains. Something so simple that most people never even think about it. When he drives in light rain or drizzle, his windshield wipers drive him crazy. They only work at one speed, constantly swiping back and forth across the glass, even when it's barely sprinkling. Swipe, swipe, swipe. It's distracting. It's annoying. And for someone who already has vision problems from that wedding night accident, it's actually dangerous. So he starts thinking. The human eye doesn't blink constantly at the same speed. It blinks when it needs to. Why can't a windshield wiper work the same way? Why can't it wipe intermittently, adjusting to how much rain is actually falling? Now, Robert Kearns isn't just some guy with an idea. He's an engineer. He understands how things work. He starts sketching designs in notebooks. He's thinking about circuits, about timers, about how to make a wiper blade pause between swipes. His wife thinks he's obsessed. His kids watch him take apart wiper motors at the kitchen table. He's spending every free moment on this problem. And then, in his basement workshop, surrounded by wires and circuit boards and broken wiper motors, he figures it out. He creates a system using modified windshield wiper motors combined with electronic controls. The key innovation is an intermittent circuit that allows the wiper to make a single swipe and then pause for an adjustable interval before swiping again. It mimics the human eye. It's elegant. It's simple. It's genius. He builds a working prototype and installs it in his 1962 Ford Galaxy. He tests it in light rain, heavy rain, drizzle, mist. It works perfectly. The wipers swipe once, pause, swipe again, pause. The interval can be adjusted based on how hard it's raining. He's done it. He's actually done it. In 1964, he files for a patent. He goes through all the proper channels, documents everything, does it by the book. And on November 5th, 1968, he receives US patent number 3,351,836 for his intermittent windshield wiper system. He's now the official legal inventor of this technology. The patent is his. The idea is his. Nobody can use it without his permission. Now here's where Robert Kearns makes a decision that will define the rest of his life. He doesn't want to just license his patent and collect royalties. He wants to manufacture the wipers himself. He wants to build a company. He's got big dreams. He's thinking about factories, about production lines, about becoming a major supplier to the auto industry. He's a professor, but he sees himself becoming an inventor-entrepreneur, just like the great American inventors of the past. So he starts approaching the big auto companies. First stop, Ford Motor Company, right there in Detroit. This is 1969. Ford is one of the biggest corporations in the world. Kearns figures they'll see the value in his invention. He figures they'll want to work with him. He's nervous, sure, but he's confident in what he's created. The meetings go well, really well. Ford's engineers are impressed. They test his system. They ask questions. They want to see the technical details. Kearns shows them everything. He demonstrates how it works. He explains the circuitry. He hands over blueprints, technical specifications, prototype units. He's thinking, this is how business works. You show the buyer what you've got. You prove it works. Then you negotiate a deal. Ford tells him they're very interested. They ask him to leave some materials with them so their engineers can evaluate it further. Kearns does. He's excited. He goes home and tells his wife they might be about to hit it big. He's imagining the contracts, the manufacturing deals, the money that's going to change their lives. Then weeks go by. Then months. Ford stops returning his calls. The meetings dry up. Kearns keeps trying to reach his contacts there. Nothing. It's like they've ghosted him. He's confused. He's frustrated. What happened? Did they decide they didn't want it? Did they find a problem with the design? Then 1969 turns into 1970. Kearns is still trying to get answers from Ford when he sees something that makes his blood run cold. He's watching TV and sees a commercial for the 1970 Mercury models. And right there in the ad, they're showing off a new feature. Intermittent windshield wipers. His intermittent windshield wipers. The same system he invented. The same system he showed them. He can't believe what he's seeing. He drives to a dealership. He looks at the new cars. He examines the wiper systems. They've made some modifications, changed some details, but the core concept, the fundamental innovation, it's his. They took his idea and put it in their cars without his permission, without a contract, without paying him a single cent. Robert Kearns does what any reasonable person would do. He contacts Ford. He sends letters. He tries to set up meetings. He explains that they're using his patented technology. Surely this is just a misunderstanding, right? Surely, once they realize they're violating his patent, they'll want to make it right. They'll apologize. They'll negotiate fair compensation. That's how the system works, right? Wrong. Ford's response, when he finally gets one, is basically this. Prove it. They don't deny they're using intermittent wipers, but they claim their system is different enough that it doesn't violate his patent. They've got lawyers. Lots of lawyers. Expensive lawyers. And those lawyers are very good at making arguments about why Ford's system is technically different from Kearns' patent, even though it does the exact same thing in basically the same way. But it gets worse, because Ford isn't the only one. Kearns starts noticing that other car companies are doing the same thing. Chrysler adds intermittent wipers to their cars in 1974. General Motors follows. Then the foreign manufacturers, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, Honda. Everybody's suddenly got intermittent wipers. They've all somehow independently come up with the same innovation within a few years of each other, right after Kearns showed Ford his invention. The coincidence is impossible to ignore. The auto industry had decades to figure out intermittent wipers before Kearns invented them. But within a few years of him showing Ford his patented system, suddenly every major car manufacturer has the same technology. Either it's the biggest coincidence in automotive history, or the technology spread through the industry after Ford got access to it. Now, Robert Kearns has a choice to make. He can let it go. He can accept that big corporations took his idea and there's nothing he can do about it. He can move on with his life, keep teaching, keep being a professor and a father and a husband. Or he can fight. He decides to fight. This is where the story stops being about an invention and starts being about obsession, about principle, about one man against the entire American automotive industry. Because Robert Kearns isn't just fighting for money. He's fighting because he believes the system is supposed to protect inventors. He believes patents mean something. He believes that if you create something, document it, and get it legally recognized, then you have rights. And if those rights are violated, the courts will make it right. He's about to learn just how wrong he is about that. In 1978, Kearns files his first lawsuit against Ford Motor Company. Not just for patent infringement, not just for damages. He's suing for what he believes Ford did. They deliberately stole his invention after he showed it to them in good faith. This isn't just a patent dispute. This is theft. This is corporate betrayal. And he's going to prove it. Now, Kearns isn't wealthy. He's a college professor. He's got a modest income and a family to support. Ford, on the other hand, is one of the largest corporations on Earth. They've got legal departments bigger than some law firms. They've got unlimited resources. They can bury him in paperwork, drag out proceedings, file motion after motion after motion until he runs out of money and gives up. And that's exactly what they try to do. The lawsuit immediately becomes a nightmare. Ford's legal strategy is simple: delay, complicate, and exhaust. They file counterclaims. They challenge every aspect of the patent. They argue that Kearns' invention isn't actually novel, that similar systems existed before, that his patent shouldn't have been granted in the first place. They bring in expert witnesses who testify that Ford's system is fundamentally different. They produce mountains of technical documents. They turn what should be a straightforward case into a labyrinth of legal complexity. And it's working. The case drags on. 1 year becomes 2. 2 becomes 5. Legal fees are piling up. Kearns has hired lawyers, but he can't afford the kind of legal firepower that Ford has. He's spending every dollar he has on this fight. He's taking out loans. He's mortgaging his future. His family is suffering. His wife Phyllis begs him to stop. She sees what this is doing to him. The obsession, the stress, the financial drain. Their marriage is falling apart. His relationship with his kids is deteriorating. He's not sleeping. He's not eating properly. Every waking moment is consumed with the lawsuit, with documents, with strategy, with this all-consuming need to prove that he was right and Ford was wrong. In 1980, his wife files for divorce. She can't take it anymore. The man she married, the father of her children, is being destroyed by this lawsuit. He's choosing the case over his family. She takes the kids and leaves. Kearns is now alone, living in an apartment, surrounded by legal documents and case files, fighting a war against one of the most powerful corporations in the world. But he doesn't stop. He can't stop. Because stopping would mean admitting that Ford can just steal from inventors and get away with it. Stopping would mean the system doesn't work. Stopping would mean everything he believed about American innovation and patent protection was a lie. The case continues to drag through the courts. Appeals, motions, delays, more appeals. Years pass. The legal bills keep mounting. Kearns can't afford his lawyers anymore, so he makes a decision that everyone tells him is insane. He fires his lawyers and decides to represent himself. A college professor with no law degree is now going up against Ford Motor Company's elite legal team in federal court. Everyone thinks he's lost his mind. His friends tell him to give up. Legal experts say he has no chance. You can't represent yourself in a complex patent case against a major corporation. It's impossible. Robert Kearns doesn't care. He starts studying law. He reads patent cases. He learns courtroom procedure. He teaches himself how to file motions, how to present evidence, how to examine witnesses. He's working 20-hour days, preparing for court appearances, researching precedents, building his case brick by brick, and somehow, against all odds, he's holding his own. He's not smooth. He's not polished. But he knows his invention inside and out. He knows every detail of his patent. He knows exactly what he showed Ford and when. And he's relentless. Where Ford's lawyers try to obscure things with legal language and technical jargon, Kearns cuts through it with simple facts. He invented it. He patented it. He showed it to them. They used it without permission. End of story, but the case still isn't moving forward. Ford's strategy continues to work. They keep delaying. They keep filing motions. They keep dragging it out. They're betting that eventually Kearns will run out of money, run out of energy, or just die before the case is resolved. And they're almost right. In 1989, something happens. After more than a decade of legal warfare, the case finally goes to trial. Not for the full damages, not for everything Kearns is seeking, but for a partial claim against Ford. It's a jury trial in Detroit. Federal court. Kearns versus Ford Motor Company. Kearns represents himself. He's nervous, but he's prepared. He's been preparing for this moment for over 20 years. He presents his case to the jury. He shows them his patent. He shows them the timeline. He demonstrates his original prototype. He explains in simple, clear terms what he invented and what Ford did. Ford's lawyers present their defense. They argue that their system is different. They bring in experts. They show technical diagrams. They try to confuse the issue with complexity. But here's what they can't get around: the basic facts. Robert Kearns invented intermittent windshield wipers. He patented them. Ford didn't have them before he showed up. Ford had them after he showed up. And Ford never paid him or licensed his patent. The jury deliberates. Days pass. Kearns waits. After everything he's sacrificed, after his marriage, his money, his health, his entire adult life consumed by this fight, it all comes down to 12 people in a room deciding whether he's right or wrong. The jury comes back. They find in favor of Robert Kearns. Ford infringed on his patent. Ford has to pay damages. The jury awards him over $10 million. Robert Kearns has won. After over a decade of fighting, he's actually won. A single man representing himself has defeated Ford Motor Company in federal court. But the story doesn't end there. Because Kearns doesn't just want to beat Ford, he wants to beat all of them. Every company that stole his invention. Every corporation that used his technology without permission. He's tasted victory now, and he wants more. In 1990, he files a lawsuit against Chrysler Corporation. Same claims, same infringement, same story. They used his patented technology without permission. Chrysler responds the same way Ford did. They fight. They delay. They try to bury him in legal motions. But Kearns has learned from the Ford case. He knows the system now. He knows how to fight these battles. The Chrysler case also drags on for years. More delays, more motions, more appeals. But Kearns is relentless. He's living in a small apartment, surviving on modest means, devoting every waking moment to these lawsuits. He's not doing this for the money anymore, if he ever really was. He's doing this because he needs to prove a point. He needs to prove that the system works. That inventors can't just be crushed by corporations. That patents mean something. In 1992, the Chrysler case goes to trial. Again, Kearns represents himself. Again, he presents his case clearly and simply. Again, the jury finds in his favor. They award him over $30 million in damages from Chrysler. 2 victories. 2 of the biggest auto manufacturers in America have been found guilty of infringing on his patent. Robert Kearns has proven his point. He's vindicated. He's won. But at what cost? By this point, Kearns is in his 60s. He's spent over 20 years in legal battles. His marriage ended. His relationships with some of his children are strained. He's spent millions of his own money on legal fees. He's suffered multiple nervous breakdowns. He's been hospitalized for stress-related illnesses. The fight has consumed his entire adult life. And here's the thing that's almost unbearably tragic about this whole story. Robert Kearns never wanted to be a crusader. He never wanted to spend his life in courtrooms. He just wanted to be an inventor and a businessman. He wanted to manufacture his windshield wipers and make a decent living from his innovation. If Ford had just offered him a fair deal back in 1969, if they'd said, "Yes, we'll license your patent and pay you royalties," none of this would have happened. He would have taken the deal. He would have been happy, but they didn't. They took his invention and they thought they could get away with it because he was just one man and they were Ford Motor Company. They thought he didn't have the resources or the stamina to fight them. They were wrong about that. But the price of proving them wrong was his entire life. The damages he was awarded, the $40 million combined from Ford and Chrysler, sounds like a lot. But after legal fees, after taxes, after over 20 years of expenses, it wasn't the windfall you might think. More importantly, it wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was about respect. It was about recognition. It was about making sure that what he invented was acknowledged as his. There's another layer to this story that makes it even more significant. The Kearns cases changed patent law in America. Before his lawsuits, corporations routinely infringed on individual inventors' patents, knowing that most people couldn't afford to fight back. The legal system was stacked against the little guy. Big companies could just outlast you, outspend you, and eventually you'd give up. But Kearns proved that wasn't always true. He proved that determination and principle could sometimes overcome unlimited corporate resources. His cases became precedents. They influenced how courts handled patent infringement. They made it a little bit harder for corporations to just steal ideas from independent inventors. Law schools started teaching the Kearns cases. They became examples of what one person could accomplish against impossible odds. Legal scholars wrote papers about his strategies, about how he represented himself, about the implications for patent law. The story of the intermittent windshield wiper became a story about American innovation, about the patent system, about corporate power and individual rights. But here's what often gets lost in that discussion. Robert Kearns didn't set out to be a legal pioneer. He didn't want to change patent law. He just wanted credit for what he created. He wanted the system that was supposed to protect inventors to actually protect him. The fact that he had to fight for over 20 years to get that protection shows just how broken the system was. Think about what intermittent windshield wipers mean. They're in virtually every car manufactured in the world today. Hundreds of millions of vehicles. They've been standard equipment for decades. They improve safety in rain, in snow, in fog. They reduce driver distraction. They've probably saved lives. And the man who invented them had to sacrifice his marriage, his health, his career, and 2 decades of his life just to get recognition for creating them. The auto industry made billions from intermittent wipers. Billions. They added them to every model. They advertised them as a feature. They sold cars partly because of this innovation. And the inventor got a tiny fraction of that value, and only after destroying himself in court to get it. There's a broader point here about how innovation works in America. We like to tell stories about inventors who create something and get rich from it. We like the mythology of the lone genius who has an idea and becomes successful. And sometimes that happens. But a lot of times, this is what happens instead. Someone creates something genuinely useful, something that improves people's lives. And large corporations take it and profit from it, while the actual inventor gets nothing. The patent system is supposed to prevent this. That's literally why it exists. The Constitution grants Congress the power to create patent and copyright laws specifically to promote the progress of science and useful arts, by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. The founders understood that innovation needs protection. They knew that if people could just steal your ideas, there'd be no incentive to create new things. But having a patent isn't enough if you can't afford to defend it. And that's what Ford and Chrysler were counting on. They knew Kearns had a valid patent. They didn't dispute that he invented intermittent wipers. They just bet that he couldn't afford to fight them in court long enough to prove infringement. They almost won that bet. The Kearns story also reveals something about corporate culture in the auto industry during this period. This was the era when Detroit was declining, when Japanese manufacturers were gaining market share, when American cars were getting a reputation for poor quality. And part of that problem was exactly this attitude. The belief that the big companies could do whatever they wanted, that they didn't have to respect inventors or innovators or even their own customers. Ford could have embraced Kearns's invention. They could have licensed it properly, paid him fairly, and built a partnership with a talented inventor. Instead, they took what he showed them and tried to cut him out. And in doing so, they created an enemy who would spend decades making them pay for that decision. From a pure business standpoint, it was incredibly stupid. The legal fees Ford spent fighting Kearns probably exceeded what it would have cost to just license the patent in the first place. But it wasn't really about the money for Ford either. It was about control. It was about not letting some college professor tell them what to do. It was about maintaining the hierarchy where big corporations make the decisions and individual inventors are grateful for whatever scraps they're given. Kearns refused to accept that hierarchy, and it shocked them. Robert Kearns died in 2005 at the age of 77. He never fully recovered from the toll the legal battles took on him. In his later years, he tried to repair relationships with his children. Some of those relationships healed, some didn't. The damage was too deep. His story was eventually told in a 2008 film called Flash of Genius, with Greg Kinnear playing Kearns. The movie took some liberties with the facts, as movies do, but it captured the essential tragedy of the story. A man who invented something useful and spent his life fighting to get credit for it. But here's what makes the story even more poignant. By the time Kearns won his lawsuits in the early 1990s, intermittent windshield wipers were already being replaced by more advanced systems. Rain-sensing wipers were being developed. Computer-controlled systems. The technology was moving on. His invention, the thing he fought so hard for, was already becoming obsolete. That's the nature of technology. Innovation builds on innovation. Today's breakthrough is tomorrow's standard feature. The intermittent wiper was brilliant for its time, but technology doesn't stand still. And there's something almost unbearably sad about the fact that Kearns spent decades fighting for recognition of an invention that the world was already moving beyond. But maybe that's also the point. The specific technology isn't what matters. What matters is the principle. What matters is whether we have a system that protects and rewards innovation, or whether we have a system where big corporations can take what they want from individual inventors. The intermittent windshield wiper is now just a standard feature that nobody thinks about. When you're driving in light rain and you adjust your wipers to swipe intermittently, you're not thinking about Robert Kearns. You're not thinking about the decades of legal warfare. You're not thinking about the destroyed marriage and the nervous breakdowns and the obsessive determination. You're just thinking about getting home safely, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how it should be. The best inventions are the ones that become invisible, that get so thoroughly integrated into daily life that we forget they were ever invented at all. Nobody thinks about who invented the ballpoint pen or the paperclip or the zipper. These things just exist now. They're part of the background of modern life. But someone did invent them. Someone had the insight, did the work, solved the problem. And in a just world, those people would get recognition and reward for their contributions. In the case of Robert Kearns, he had to fight harder than any person should ever have to fight just to get a fraction of what he deserved. Patent number 3351/136 survived 30 years of court battles. It survived challenges from some of the biggest corporations in the world. It survived because Robert Kearns refused to let it die. But what it killed in the process was his marriage, his health, his career, and much of his life. Was it worth it? That's not for anyone else to answer. Kearns believed it was. He believed in principle. He believed that standing up to corporate theft mattered more than personal comfort or happiness. He believed that protecting the rights of inventors was important enough to sacrifice everything for. You might disagree with that choice. You might think he should have taken whatever settlement was offered and moved on with his life. You might think no invention is worth destroying yourself over. And maybe you're right, but it's easy to make that judgment when you're not the one who created something only to watch. Corporations steal it and profit from it, while the whole world acts like you don't exist. Robert Kearns wanted one thing: recognition that he invented the intermittent windshield wiper. That's all. Just acknowledgement that it was his idea, his innovation, his contribution. The fact that he had to spend decades and destroy his life to get that acknowledgement is an indictment of the system that's supposed to protect inventors. Today, when auto manufacturers develop a new technology, they're more careful about patent rights. They do more due diligence. They're more willing to license innovations properly. And part of the reason for that is Robert Kearns. He made it too expensive, too risky, too difficult to just steal from inventors. He changed the calculation. That's his real legacy. Not the intermittent windshield wiper itself, but the principle that individual inventors have rights that even the largest corporations have to respect. It shouldn't have taken a 30-year legal war to establish that principle, but it did. And Robert Kearns was the one willing to fight that war. Every time it rains and your windshield wipers swipe intermittently, pausing between swipes just like a human eye blinks, you're using Robert Kearns' invention. You're benefiting from his insight, his engineering skill, his determination. The system he created is still saving lives, still making driving safer, still doing exactly what he designed it to do over 60 years ago. He paid an enormous price to ensure that the world would remember he was the one who figured it out. Whether that price was worth paying is something only he could answer. But what's certain is that he did figure it out, he did fight for it, and he did win. In the end, after everything, the courts acknowledged what he had known all along. He was the inventor of the intermittent windshield wiper. Patent US 33536A stands as a testament to one man's refusal to be erased by corporate power. It survived 30 years of legal challenges because Robert Kearns would not let anyone take it from him. What it cost him to keep it alive is a story about the real price of innovation in America, about the gap between how the system is supposed to work and how it actually works, and about what happens when one person decides that principle matters more than peace. The next time you're driving in light rain and your wipers swipe once and pause and swipe again, think about Robert Kearns. Think about what it took to make that simple, elegant, life-saving technology available to the world. Think about whether the system should require that kind of sacrifice from its innovators. And think about whether, if you were in his position, you would have fought as hard and as long as he did. Robert Kearns proved that one person can take on the entire auto industry and win. But he also proved just how much that victory can cost. His patent survived, but everything else in its path, including the man himself, was forever changed by the battle. If you want to see what happens when corporations meet someone who refuses to back down, check out the next video.